Dear listeners, like there is a moment that happens to most of us, like usually in the middle of something small, like washing dishes or sitting at a red light, when we realize that we haven't actually been somewhere else entirely, replaying a conversation from yesterday or rehearsing one that hasn't happened yet. And in that gap between where we are and where our attention went, something important slips through. And today we are talking about what it means to come back, to notice, and why. Why that simple act of returning to the present moment might be the one of the most radical things that we can do for our mental health. Yeah. So, here, dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host, Avik, and this is the podcast which is about the real everyday work of taking care of your mind, not through quick fixes or empty promises, but through honest conversations about what actually helps. And today we are sitting down with someone who understands that mindfulness is not about perfection or some enlightened state that you reach and stay in forever. It's all about the small and repeated choice to notice like where you are and where you are feeling, even when it's uncomfortable, right? And today we have a very lovely guest with us today. Please welcome Heather Elliott. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Avik. I look forward to being here.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much for being here, Elliott. And um, like dear listeners, Heather works at the intersection of mindfulness practice and mental health and helping people find steadiness, not by avoiding their inner wither, but by learning how to be with it. Yes. So, not too much of a time, dear listeners. Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So Heather, I mean, people say that mindfulness is just about clearing your mind or um uh, stopping your thoughts. And when they cannot do that, they think that they are failing at it. So, what is the biggest misunderstanding here that people have about what mindfulness actually is?
Well, mindfulness can include stopping your thoughts. It can include like paying attention to when you're letting your mind run amok and you need to rein it in and say, wait a second. For instance, we do that a lot with fearfulness. So if we're afraid of something and then we start to worry and then we start to catastrophize and then we think about what all that can happen. Mindfulness, basically, to me, is always paying attention to the mind and seeing what it is we're focused upon so that if our mind does start to run away with something that we would prefer not to happen, and fear is one of those things that we're taught doesn't lead us down a good path, then our job from a mindful perspective is to then step in and say, okay, whoa, whoa, and then rein in the mind and say, is that really the truth? Is this really a problem? Is there something that I need to challenge here? Is there something I need to solve? But it's mindfulness is not just taking care of the runaway mind. It's also paying attention to the big picture of what you're creating in your life and what you're focused on the regular. So, when I teach my students mindfulness, what I'm doing is I'm helping them to move into the observer position. So if you can think of your life from the perspective of where an airplane sees life, so high up, so that mindfulness takes place high up when you're looking down upon your life or down upon your mind and what it's thinking about from the perspective of, okay, where is this thinking taking me? And is this taking me in the right direction? So the action of mindfulness is actually the action of simply paying attention to what you're focusing upon, whether it's thoughts, whether it's the reality you're creating, whether it's patterns in your life that you keep repeating, or you notice that people, the same kinds of people keep showing up in your world, and you're asking the question, gee whiz, why are these people showing up in my world when I would prefer to have a different type of person showing up in my world? Does that make sense to you?
Makes sense, definitely. And uh, it is really, really helpful, I'd say. But still, I want to ask you one thing that so if it is not about emptying the mind, then what it is about? Like, uh, what are the people? I mean, what are people actually doing when they practice mindfulness in a way that supports their mental health? So, uh, if you can share.
Yeah, so in my world, and I will say it from my perspective, consciousness is creating your reality. So, in other words, consciousness is all the thinking that you do, all the mindsets you hold, your subconscious as well as your conscious thoughts. So, when you're practicing mindfulness, what you're doing is you're observing the big picture of the consciousness that is creating your world. Ideally, because you have tactics or strategies or ways of being able to challenge some of that stuff. So the work that I do mainly is working with clients on big patterns that they see in their life to help them be able to mindfully observe the pattern and then locate the thought patterns, the belief systems that are maintaining those patterns in their life. So you need to be mindful along with something. So it's not just emptying the mind. You can do that. I mean, we do that in meditation. And what that does is help raise our frequency, but only in meditation. So, really, what we're doing in mindfulness in general is finding ways to take control of our consciousness in a way that creates the world we want to engage with. So, the world we prefer. Did that answer your question, or did I just create more questions?
No, no, no. That's definitely correct, and I think that actually matters so much because uh, I mean, most of us have been taught that a busy mind is a problem to solve, but hearing that mindfulness is about noticing and not kind of removing or erasing it, it makes it feel like definitely I mean, something you can actually do, not something you have to be a certain type of person to access it. So, uh, uh, yeah, exactly. So,
Oh, definitely not. Like, anybody can become aware of their mind,
mm,
as I said, from an observer position. So, no, like, we're never gonna empty it, Avik, unless we spend our entire lifetime in meditation and emptying our mind. But, your mind is there as a tool, as a resource. But the thing is that we gather in the process of our life, we gather together so many thoughts that don't necessarily reflect who we are at our current age. Okay, the mind is kind of like a composite of everything that we've ever believed since we were in the womb. So there's a lot of thought in there. And so mindfulness, what it does is it starts to help us sort out what is current and what isn't. So I think of mind more like a piece of software, very sophisticated software that helps us navigate our world. But like any computer, I have old software running on my computer and we have old software running in our brain.
mm,
So that it's not about emptying the mind, but it is very much about wanting to raise up the older or to transform the older consciousness that is no longer relevant, to be able to transform some of the limiting mindsets and belief systems we still hold on to that came out of our previous existence, like our past, and to be able to generate more constructive belief systems and mindsets that are a reflection of who we are today. I'll give you an example is that somebody, a brilliant person has great ideas, but can't get it off the ground because they have this insecurity in them that's afraid to fail. And so what you have there is two minds. You've got the mind that is brilliant, the mind that has all the gifts, that can do all the remarkable things, that wants to share what it knows with the world, but then it has this other pattern called insecurity, and I can guarantee you that's coming out of their past. Something happened to them, created a belief system that caused them to doubt themselves, so that it doesn't matter how brilliant they are, they're always working against their insecurity. But the insecurity can be examined, and we can get to the root structure of what creates that insecurity. And once there, we can change it, because thought, like a program, is lines of code, and we can change it. We can update it. We can see it differently. And when we do, just like software on a computer, the entire mind will update with the changes we made. And so insecurity can be changed into a feeling of security by working with the belief systems.
Exactly. So, like when someone's mental health is struggling, whether it is anxiety or depression, um, what is it about the way our minds work in those states that mindfulness can actually address? I mean, uh, if I have to say, like, what's happening underneath that makes this practice very, very relevant? If you can share.
Well, if we start with mindfulness, so again, let's use the analogy of the plane.
Yeah.
When I'm working with a client who comes in anxious or depressed, whatever it is, if you can imagine that feeling of anxiety or that feeling of depression has a story beneath it. So
Hmm.
most people interact with them like they're emotions that you need to control. So I need to do something, paste something. I need to paste calm or happiness over top of depression, or I need to paste calm over top of anxiety. But really what I do with the mindfulness is I help people dig down and say, "Okay, what's the story that supports it?" Because there is a whole story of what happened to this person that is linked to why the anxiety is showing up in their life or why the depression is showing up in their life. And so mindfully, they can be up kind of observing their life, and they can be looking down below the anxiety or depression to discover what happened to them, what beliefs they formed, what strategies they've used to navigate their world since they started to feel the anxiety or the depression. And there is a story, and once you deal with the story, then it will change. So in other words, anxiety can be removed. Depression can be removed because it is a mindset. It is not always a hormonal state inside a person. It actually is something that is held in place by the mind that can be looked at, examined through mindfulness, and changed with the right tools.
That's interesting. Yep, yep. And I definitely was thinking, I mean, to ask about our daily life. I mean, like someone's at work, or maybe they are with their family, or they're lying in a bed at night, and their mind is kind of racing. I mean, it happens like we are trying to calm down, but still something or other is coming to our mind, and or maybe their chest feels tight. So, what does mindfulness look like in that moment? Like, how does uh, someone actually use it when they are in the middle of uh, feeling overwhelmed?
So one of the things that you can do again is move into the observer position. And this is key to mindfulness, is that you actually have to shift out of all of that chatter. So all of that worry, that fear, you actually have to shift out of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so it's like, take a beat. What I often do
Mm,
is there's a visualization. If I were to put that worry or that anxiety that is running in my brain,
mm,
I can push it. If I were to put it outside of myself and see it in a chair across from me, and I'm sitting in the chair across from it. So I'm removing it from me, and I'm
mm,
taking my position as the observer, the mindfulness. And so then I can look at the fears that are running over there in that chair, and I say to myself, "Okay, if this was a friend of mine, or if this is a patient of mine, what would what would I do here?" What questions could I ask them to help
Mm.
them calm down, or that kind of thing, so that it's like putting it out there. You realize it's not all of you, because what happens when you let your mind run you is that you are thinking that you're the thoughts that you're thinking, when in fact you're not. It's just the thoughts that you're thinking in that moment are like one program inside your brain, one, and you have melded with it, which is why you're being consumed by it. So put some distance, put it in a chair over there, and then examine it. And you can examine it by saying, okay, dude, what's going on? What's going on here? Like what just happened?
Mm.
What triggered us? Like, get some perspective here, because when you're running the mind of this part of yourself, you don't have perspective. So I want to investigate it. So what happened that triggered this? What am I feeling? And then I will dig down and say, okay, what do I believe about what just happened that triggered me? So let's say that I'm running worry or fear because I'm scared that my child, I don't know, will get in trouble or whatever. I'm able to look at it and say, okay, is it really true that my child is going to be in trouble? Is that really a truth, or am I just running worry? And when you look at it objectively, you'll probably discover it's just me being worrisome. Is there really is nothing to be afraid of. And also, you can look and say, you know what? We'll see what happens when we have the teacher meeting tomorrow, and we'll go from there. But it's like looking at the worry and saying, you know what? It's not a tonight problem, and I can't deal with it tonight, but what I can do is go to the teacher meeting tomorrow, and we'll figure it out and find out what's up with my child.
Mm.
And it's like you have to separate yourself from all of the chatter that keeps running and kind of like put it to bed, as in, we'll deal with it tomorrow. It doesn't have to be solved tonight. And in fact, it can't be solved tonight. The other thing you can do with something like that is make notes, is that, like, it's like the worry part is saying, well, what about this? Let's say, okay, I've made a note of that. Okay, what about this? Okay, I've made a note about that. Okay, what about this? I've made a note about that. So, in other words, you let the worry part chatter on,
Mm.
and kind of like it runs out of steam. And when it runs out of steam, then it will relax because it's been heard. But it's like the action of writing down the worries that are in this part, it's like saying, is that a tonight problem? No. Okay, so we're going to put it to the side. Is that a tonight problem? No, it's not. We'll put it to the side. So there's ways of playing with your mind from a mindful perspective that keeps you separate from the information, but allows you to manage the information, to be able to decide it. And it may not be that all the anxiety or worry is going to go away, but it's like I heard it, I've noted it. There's nothing I can do tonight, and I can put it to bed. I can
Yeah.
let it be for tonight. And this I will pick up in the morning and deal with when
Mm.
I have the capacity.
Right. Yep. That's interesting. So, if you have to give one advice to the listeners today, what that will be?
One piece of advice:
Yeah.
question your emotions and reactions. So many of us believe that, if someone says something and I feel hurt, then they hurt me. Or if someone says something and I feel disrespected, then they purposefully disrespected me. My invitation to people would be: question your emotions to understand what it is that you believe at the foundation that is creating that feeling. Because the way it feels in you is about you. It's not necessarily the message being sent from the other person. I deal a lot with relationship issues, have dealt with them in the past. And I can say the single biggest issue in any relationship is the fact that people misinterpret what other people are saying and how they're acting, because reality is inside of you. It is your mind that is constantly interpreting life. through the lens of what you believe. It's not necessarily the way it lands in you is how they sent it. And if people stopped to ask, did you mean to hurt me? If you could just stop the dialogue to say, did you mean to hurt me or did you mean to disrespect me? They would clear things up so much faster than if they just let it fester. And that's what most people do is they gloss over and they make it, oh, he didn't really mean that or whatever. They don't check it out. But if it happens repeatedly, people form a story about the other person that may or may not be truthful at all. And so stopping to ask the question, what is it I believe happened here? And then verifying whether it was indeed what the other person intended. If people got used to doing that, it would make a world of difference in terms of relationships.
Got it. And if listeners wants to connect with you, how they can connect?
They can go to my website, mindfulchange.com. On the website, I have a free course if they go to mindfulchange.com/course. And I also have information on 5D psychology if they go to mindfulchange.com/5D. And there's a form on my site that they can contact me directly if they wish.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links, details, everything into the show notes for easy reference. And I have to say, like, mindfulness is not a cure. It is not a state that you arrive at and then stay. So, it is the practice of coming back again and again, day by day, to the only moment that you actually have. So, uh, yeah, that's it. And thank you so much, Heather, for sharing your perspective. And it is really great learning more about your work as well. And people definitely, I believe, they will definitely find it very, very helpful. So thank you so much for that.
And thank you for having me, Avik.
Amazing. And dear listeners, like, thank you so much for being here today and for bringing your um, interest into it. And also, if you are listening, or maybe you'll be listening later, if there is one thing to take with you from this conversation today, I'd say it's this, that you don't have to fix your mind to take care of it. You just have to be willing to notice, to return, to start again when you need to. That's the work. And it's enough, right? So, thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm your host, Avik, and this is Element Have a Life. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.